What if everything you consider instant energy, from caffeine to refined sugar, had already started 40,000 years ago with a sip of fermented honey under the stars? Today you will discover how humanity's first energy drink not only gave physical strength, but also created sacred bonds between the living, the dead, and the gods. Long before the first Red Bull was opened during a late-night work session, long before the first cup of coffee warmed tired hands, there was a drink that did much more than awaken the body. It awakened the soul, connected tribes, and opened gateways to the divine. 30,000 years ago, when our Homo sapiens ancestors were still competing with Neanderthals for survival, they had already discovered the secret that the modern industry rediscovered with billions of dollars in research, that certain substances not only give us physical energy, but also transform our perception of reality, our capacity for endurance, and our connection to the sacred. But unlike the modern Red Bull, a synthetic formula created for individual productivity and consumption in a disposable can, the Paleolithic sacred beverage was much more powerful. It created community, rites of passage, and a bridge between the visible and invisible worlds. What was this ancestral drink? Why did its power go far beyond simple physical energy? And more importantly, what have we lost when we abandoned it? The sacred accident that changed everything. It all began with an accident that would forever change the destiny of humanity. Somewhere in East Africa, more than 40,000 years ago, a wild beehive, abandoned after a violent storm that lasted for several moons. The precious honey dripping for days into a natural rock hollow, slowly mixing with pure rainwater and wild spores suspended in the moist air. Imagine the first human brave enough to dare to taste that golden and mysteriously bubbling substance. The taste was as sweet as the sun-ripened acacia flowers, but with a spicy, almost electric undertone that burned softly like embers under the tongue. The aroma was unmistakable. A symphony of wildflowers mixed with something alive, effervescent, almost breathing on its own. The texture was not like regular honey. It was more fluid, but with tiny bubbles that burst in the mouth, creating an effervescent sensation that rose to the nostrils. And the effect was indescribable. First came the warmth, radiating from the stomach throughout the entire body. Then a strange but familiar energy. As if every muscle was waking from a deep sleep, and then the mental transformation. It wasn't just physical energy. It was as if every cell in the body awakened, and at the same time, the mind soared toward the stars, connecting with something much greater. Thus was born mead, humanity's first fermented alcoholic beverage. But this simple definition does not do justice to what it truly was. A liquid portal between two worlds, a technology of transcendence that would be passed down from generation to generation for millennia. Archaeological evidence found in Georgia, dated 8,000 years ago, shows ceramic jars with unequivocal chemical residues of mead, but analyses of fossilized pollen in African caves suggest that the discovery was much, much earlier. But what our ancestors didn't know is that they were about to discover something that would forever change not only how humans ate, but how they connected with one another, with nature, and with the divine. Our ancestors didn't understand biochemistry, but they felt the magic happening in their own bodies. That golden substance was, in fact, a perfect alchemy created by nature over millions of years of evolution. When Paleolithic bees collected nectar from wildflowers, including plants we now know have medicinal properties, such as echinacea, wild chamomile, and even precursors to plants with natural alkaloids, they created a honey rich in bioactive compounds. The natural fermentation, caused by wild yeasts present in the air and on the surface of the fruits themselves, transformed simple sugars into something revolutionary, immediate energy for the body, and a subtle but profound alteration of consciousness. It was as if each sip contained two distinct yet complementary spirits. The spirit of strength, which warmed muscles, accelerated the heart, and gave superhuman endurance, and the spirit of vision, which made colors more vivid, sounds clearer, intuitions sharper, and the connection with other beings more intense. But there was a third, more subtle spirit, the spirit of unity. When consumed in a group, mead created a neurological synchronization among participants. Breaths aligned, heartbeats synchronized, and complex decisions that could take days were made by near instantaneous consensus. A modern researcher, Dr. Patrick McGovern of the University of Pennsylvania, spent more than 2 decades analyzing archaeological residues from ancient containers and discovered something that completely changed our understanding of these ancestral beverages. These recipes were so sophisticated that they contained the natural equivalent of modern energy drink components: taurine from natural sources, caffeine from plants, B-complex vitamins from fermented honey, but with one ingredient that we have completely lost in modernity. But what was this lost ingredient? Why might its absence explain much of the existential emptiness we feel today? And how might this discovery be changing the way we understand our own evolution? The rituals that created temporary superhumans. The sacred beverage was not consumed casually or for individual pleasure. It was the center of a sophisticated social technology that literally created temporary superhumans, beings with physical, mental, and social capabilities that were amplified in a controlled way. In the ritual of the Great Hunt, always held during the new moon for maximum secrecy, selected warriors drank mead fermented with specific regional herbs, acacia leaves for mental clarity, plant roots that we now know contain rhodiola-like compounds for physical endurance, and flower petals that functioned as mild natural stimulants. It wasn't just liquid courage, it was real, documentable physical endurance. They could walk for 3 or 4 consecutive days without significant rest. Track animals with superhuman precision, even in total darkness, and maintain absolute focus, even under extreme life-or-death pressure. The secret was in the perfect chemical combination. Immediately absorbed sugars for instant energy, alcohol in a mathematically precise dose to reduce anxiety without compromising coordination, and plant compounds that worked as long-lasting natural stimulants. In the ritual of tribal union, held when different nomadic groups met in neutral territories, mead functioned as a chemical solvent for ego and distrust. Personal barriers built for survival temporarily dissolved. Ancestral fears of other groups dramatically lessened, and something truly magical happened. Tribes that could be mortal rivals became allies for generations. Shy young people discovered natural leadership, and complex political decisions that could take weeks of negotiation were resolved in a single night of celebration. But there was a third, even more mysterious and powerful ritual: the ritual of passage to the afterlife. Special versions of the drink, mixed with specific visionary plants like precursors to ayahuasca or mushrooms with psychoactive properties, were reserved for shamans and individuals at times of extreme transition: birth, puberty, marriage, severe illness, or proximity to death. It was during these rituals that Paleolithic shamans received seemingly impossible knowledge. About the medicinal properties of plants they had not yet encountered, about climate changes that had not yet occurred, about the location of distant resources, about the deepest secrets of nature and the cosmos. Cave paintings discovered in France, Spain, and even Brazil show human figures in states of ecstasy. Surrounded by spiritual animals and complex geometric symbols, always with objects that archaeologists unequivocally identify as ceremonial containers for liquids. They were not representations of hallucinations or fantasies. They were visual records of ancestral download sessions of information that kept entire tribes alive in hostile environments. But then, something terrible happened, and humanity lost this sacred technology forever. Burying it under layers of civilization, organized religion, and social control. The Great Rupture. When we lost our ancestral power, for tens of thousands of years, the sacred beverage kept tribes united, physically strong, and spiritually connected to forces greater than themselves. But when humans began to abandon nomadism and settle into fixed agricultural civilizations, something fundamental began to die in the human soul. The transition was not sudden. It was a slow, almost imperceptible erosion that took millennia to complete. Agriculture brought food, abundance, and security, but it also brought something that our nomadic ancestors had never known: centralized control and rigid social stratification. Kings, priests, and rulers quickly discovered that the sacred beverage posed a threat to the established power. When common people had direct access to the divine, they didn't need religious hierarchies as intermediaries. When tribes spontaneously united through rituals, they didn't need rulers to resolve conflicts. Gradually, the production of the sacred beverage was monopolized by dominant classes, who discovered that mead, when mass-produced without rituals and the knowledge of complementary plants, became just regular alcohol. The power of tribal union degraded into individual drunkenness. Spiritual connection transformed into an escape from reality. The technology of collective transcendence became a tool of social control. The drink of the gods was systematically replaced by the drink of the slaves. The complex mead, rich in medicinal plants and consumed in specific rituals with high intentions, gave way to simple alcoholic beverages, industrially produced for daily consumption, escapism, and social pacification. Worse still, the knowledge of complementary plants, exact doses, preparation rituals, and appropriate moments for consumption was either lost or deliberately suppressed. Shamans were persecuted, traditions were banned, and recipes were forgotten. And so, humanity lost its first and most powerful technology of collective transcendence. We lost the chemical recipe. We lost the social rituals, we lost the spiritual connection, but most importantly, we lost the understanding that physical energy and conscious elevation could walk together naturally and harmoniously. Centuries later, we desperately try to artificially recreate what nature gave us for free: synthetic energy drinks for energy, antidepressants for mood, anxiolytics for relaxation, stimulants for focus, alcohol for socialization. We have fragmented into multiple chemical substances, what our ancestors achieved with a single natural drink. But none of this can bring together physical energy with spiritual elevation and genuine tribal connection. None of this creates real community. None of this connects us to something greater. Is there still time to recover what we have lost? Or is this ancestral technology gone forever? The modern rediscovery, the return of lost knowledge. Today, after centuries of scientific pursuit, researchers are confirming what our ancestors knew intuitively through decades of direct experience. Modern science is literally rediscovering and validating Paleolithic wisdom. Dr. E. Robin Dunbar. From the prestigious University of Oxford, conducted revolutionary studies that demonstrated something surprising. Certain specific combinations of fermented alcohol with natural sugars create unique and measurable neurological states, releasing endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin much more efficiently and balanced than any isolated substance known to modern pharmacology. Even more impressive, recent studies published in journals like Nature and Science show that naturally fermented honey contains specific probiotics, unique antioxidant compounds, and micronutrients that strengthen the immune system, improve digestive function, and even promote neuroplasticity. Our ancestors were not just having fun or getting high. They were unconsciously optimizing their biology in a holistic way. And something fascinating is happening in the contemporary world. Communities that have rediscovered the artisanal production of mead using traditional methods report phenomena that echo exactly the effects described in anthropological texts about ancestral societies. Greater social satisfaction, less dependence on synthetic stimulants, a significant reduction in social anxiety, and, surprisingly, a lower incidence of alcoholism and other chemical dependencies. It is as if our cellular biology still recognizes and prefers the original recipe. After 40,000 years of evolution, as if our cells hold an epigenetic memory of millennia of co-evolution with this natural technology of transcendence. Meanwhile, the Red Bull brand spends literally billions of dollars annually on research and development, trying to artificially replicate what our ancestors created intuitively and naturally. Physical energy, plus mental elevation, plus prolonged endurance, plus social connection, plus a sense of purpose. But they keep missing the most important ingredient, the only one that truly matters. The lost ingredient was not chemical, not botanical, not technical. It was much simpler. And at the same time much more profound than any material component. The lost ingredient was sacred intention. Our ancestors created a technology that not only fueled the physical body, but simultaneously nourished the individual soul, tribal relationships, and a reverent connection to forces greater than themselves. Each sip was a conscious, shared, ritualized, and sacred act. Each moment of consumption was a moment of celebrating life, honoring ancestors, connecting with nature, and preparing for challenges that demanded the best of human nature. Today, when we open a cold can of Red Bull at 3 a.m. to finish another meaningless project, we are using the exact same deep ancestral impulse, the eternal search for physical energy and spiritual transcendence, but in a way that is completely isolated, artificialized, and disconnected from any greater meaning. The abysmal difference between the Stone Age Red Bull and today's version is not in the chemical formula. It's not in the active ingredients. It's not even in the energetic effectiveness. The difference lies entirely in the purpose, the context, and the intention. One was drunk to celebrate the abundance of life, connect deeply with the tribe, and honor greater spiritual forces. The other is drunk to compensate for chronic fatigue, work beyond the body's natural limits, and temporarily escape from modern existential emptiness. One created community, purpose, and transcendence. The other creates dependence, isolation, and even more emptiness. Perhaps humanity's next real evolution won't be to create more potent energy drinks, more sophisticated supplements, or more effective drugs, but to completely rediscover what it means to drink with sacred purpose, celebrate in genuine community, and find true energy in deep connection, not in desperate compensation. Maybe it's time to stop trying to hack our biology with synthetic chemicals and start honoring our biology with ancestral practices adapted for the modern world. Because at the end of the day, the Stone Age Red Bull wasn't just about being artificially awake to be more productive. It was about being truly and profoundly awake to be more human. And maybe that's exactly what our civilization needs most at this moment in history. If this ancestral journey has made you deeply rethink what true energy, authentic purpose, and real human connection mean, like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next expedition into the past. And tell me in the comments, have you ever tried traditional mead? What was your experience with this ancient beverage that connects the present and the past with every sacred sip? What other ancestral technologies would you like us to explore together?